Commissioner Arasi?
Here.
Commissioner Hallen is absent. Commissioner Sheard?
Here.
Commissioner Jensen?
Here.
Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Vice Chairperson Jenkins is absent, as is Chairperson Carl Durling. Thank you.
Okay. Do we do the pledge now? Okay. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Okay, so we do the minutes,
Yes.
right?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we're going to do the minutes. However, I did want to note that we, if it's all right with the commission, will hold off on approving the August 24th minutes, as I'm currently working with IT right now to get that video online, and I think it would be beneficial if we would hold off until that's posted. But we can proceed with the approval of the other minutes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, could you also state which meetings you are opening, all three meetings?
Okay, we're gonna open up all the meetings at the same time, the November 16th special meeting, the November 16th regular meeting, and the historical advisory. Okay. And then do we have to get approval for the,
This was already ran by council. We have received approval to do this. We just needed to note into the record that both meetings will be ran concurrently.
okay. All right, now what do you do?
All right, so right now, we're on item number 1, approval of the minutes. If we hold off on the August 24th, 2023 ones, then we would just be approving the 10/26, 2023 ones that were provided in your packet.
Okay. So we need a motion to approve these minutes?
Correct.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Yeah, I'll move to approve the 1026 minutes.
I second.
Perfect.
Okay,
I'll go ahead and open the roll.
okay. Oh, we had a vote.
Oh, it looks like, I'm so sorry. I'm gonna have to move your name because it looks like you're sitting in Carl's seat, and this was
Oh.
pre him not being here. So at any rate, motion passes with 4 yeses.
Okay.
Then would you make sure they approve the agenda as amended?
Oh my God, this is the worst time for me to do this, huh?
And then next, Mr. Chair, if we could get you and the commission to approve the agenda as amended.
Okay, so do we have to take
A motion for
a
that?
motion to
To
approve the agenda?
Yes,
Okay,
The amended agenda, basically, it's the two agendas combined, you mean?
correct.
Correct? Okay.
okay, can I get a motion to approve these two agendas?
I make a motion to approve the two agendas combined for tonight.
I will second.
Okay, open the roll with the understanding that Carl Durling is actually Glenn Arasi. Motion passes with 4 yeses.
Okay, so now we're gonna take up item number 1, tenant parcel map?
Yes, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, what you have before you, and if you can put the screen up, is a tentative parcel map, which is a lot split on a parcel next to, it's this parcel right here that's going to be split. You can see the mouse. Next to 2566 Foothill. And that's next to where the applicant and the owners live. The purpose of this lot split is for family purposes, so that the owners can give one lot to the children. It is a simple lot split, but according to Oroville Municipal Code 16.12.050, it must come to the Planning Commission for approval. The applicant initially planned to split the lot into 4, but has changed now, made a much more simple lot split. The top parcel, so this is the lot getting split into 2 parcels. The top parcel, we note, is, these are contour lines, so it's very hilly, and it is thickly studded with oak trees. Those will not necessarily be conditions because all we're doing is a map lot split. At time of development, whoever owns the parcel will have to come forward and deal with oak tree mitigation and slopes stability. The applicant, the Andois, are here this evening to, if they would like, to make a short presentation or to answer questions, if any. Staff recommends approval.
Thank you. Does the applicant want to speak?
No. I mean, if you have questions.
Any questions, commissioners?
I have no
No questions?
No.
Okay. All right. So anybody want to make a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve tentative parcel map 23.02.
Well, second.
Motion passes with 4 yeses.
Okay. 1, 2, where's number 2?
Parcel property on Feather River.
Yeah, the one
These
down.
are, these are easy because our staff does a great job of
They do.
documenting everything that needed to be documented. It's all here. It's
Your
just
chair's
it's
not
great to
here.
go.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to number 2. Where's number 2 at?
It's on page 15.
Okay. Item number 2, the tentative map 2301.
Yes, you can see on your screen where this parcel split, intended parcel split is. This little wedge is where the Valero gas station is. This is Highway 70. And this is a mini storage unit. This is Georgia Pacific Way down here. So it's immediately north of that. This is an intention to split 1 3-acre lot, actually 2.9 acres, into 3 1-acre lots for future development. It is zoned C2, heavy commercial, so the intent is to put like activities that are already down there on these parcels. The owner, Mark Cooper, plans to sell 1, 2, or all 3, depending on who is interested and how much land they would like to purchase. We note that the map in the packet shows a single central driveway at this location. It's a dark shaded driveway in your packet that provides access to all 3 lots. Yesterday, we received this revised map, which is also, there's a copy in front of you on your chairs. They took out the driveways and wish to allow future users, whether there's 1 user, 2 users, or 3 users, to locate their driveways as they please and at time of development and grading. So Jeff Rabo, the engineer who's doing this, is here, and Mark Cooper, the applicant, is on Zoom if they would like to make a presentation or if you have questions. Staff recommends approval.
Okay. Does the applicant wish to speak?
Jeff Rabo with Rolls National.
There we go.
Jeff Rabo with Rolls Anderson Rolls, and applicant's engineer. And you saw from the tenant map, it's pretty straightforward, pretty basic. What was presented originally was a singular access to accommodate large vehicle, truck trailer, California legal access. In the event, the parcel was going to be kind of developed as one congruent operation, and that kind of has just kind of gone by the wayside. So to provide flexibility, just frontage improvements with singular access driveways for each parcel was what we discussed with Wes yesterday. So not to say that somebody could end up purchasing two and want a large access, but they could come back to the city with a proposal for that at that time and talk to engineering and planning about that. But this time, just normal access, commercial driveway accesses for each lot.
So you're just getting approval for that. You don't have to actually do it.
No.
Okay.
I think we'd be
Just
looking
flexibility.
at this time for deferred improvement
Yeah.
agreement so that he can advertise the parcels for sale and see what interest there is.
Mr. Cooper, did you want to say anything?
No, I mean, that's pretty much what he stated.
Any questions, I guess? I'm happy to answer.
So each parcel has its own drainage, or is that gonna be taken care of
Yeah.
when
that-
they're purchased?
Currently what's shown on there, you'll see is kind of like an outline of what would, in the rear of the parcels, of what would be a future detention basin, detention collection location designed to be figured out at the time of whoever purchases it, whatever they're proposing. It's, the sizing is just based loosely on commercial properties being a lot of building and impervious surface, so it's just kind of a large footprint at this time to show this is roughly what, could be done or could be needed space-wise. But somebody could come in and just want to use it as just temporary storage or something that fits within the use permit for that category and not put a lot of building stuff on it. Somebody else might want to put a giant building on it. I don't know. So, but all that would get worked out in an engineered plan per each parcel at the time of building.
So it could be one user or three users, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
I don't have one.
Okay.
I have a question of staff. I don't know if that's when we have our
Yeah, we can
discussion
close
period.
public comment. Okay. Questions for staff?
So I'm looking at the property across the street and the different places that we have entrances. And whenever we're approving a development, I want to make sure that we're doing a good job of aligning entrances across from each other, because in the past, we haven't really been paying attention to that, and we've caused a number of traffic issues on some of our major corridors with that. If we were to have something to say about that, that would probably happen whenever we get a proposal to develop the parcel, and there's nothing that we would be able or need to do about enforcing anything like that at this time. Is that correct?
That's correct. It would be reviewed at time of the development proposal was presented. If you would like, we can add a condition that the location of the driveways must be reviewed in light of driveways across the street.
It would be appropriate just to remind ourselves that when the time comes that we take a look at that.
Any other questions for staff? All right. Get a motion?
I make a motion that we approve tentative parcel map 2301.
And is that with Warren's suggested change?
Yes, and so that's just that we consider that when the time comes for the development. Yes.
I'll second.
Smith needs to
Oh,
vote.
did I vote?
No, you did.
Oh,
Terry does.
sorry.
Thank you. Motion passes with 4 yeses.
We're on 4. Oh. Yeah. And I'll find where that is. That's the behavioral health.
Because the applicants are here, we request that item 4 be considered next.
This is the,
Oh, they're done with us, right?
Yeah, how do you shut this off?
Behavioral services. Is this a behavioral health?
Yes, the behavioral health.
Okay. Okay. Okay, Wes, what do you got for us?
Yes, Commissioners, before you this evening is a use permit for Butte County to establish an integrated behavioral health service center at the location of the current headquarters of the Feather River Recreation and Park District. The location is there on your screen. It fronts Feather River Boulevard. It's just south of Mitchell Avenue. And it's a fairly large site. It's a fairly large facility. It's a 39,000 square foot building at 1875 Feather River Boulevard. The intent of the county is to consolidate some of the services it has spread around in various locations in Oroville, and to add a couple services that are now only available in Chico. Some services will be outpatient, and the list of services is on page 52 of your packet. It includes walk-in crisis service, substance use disorder, outpatient treatment, a wellness and recovery center, and a youth center. There are no improvements to the site envisioned at all. All improvements will be on or inside the building. The B line has 2 bus routes, Route 24 and 25, that go in front or nearby. This is a aerial photo of it showing the property line and vehicle gate, et cetera. There's another parcel to the rear, and I don't, is the county purchasing that one as well? No, okay. One of the issues or concerns that we believe we have addressed is that there's walk-in services, there's outpatient services, and will the activities here at this facility encourage or allow loitering, overnight camping? Will it be an attractant for homeless or others, vagrancy and such? And we've had a number of discussions to that effect, and the applicant is here to address that, if that is a question of the Planning Commission. We heard today that there would be a maximum of 30 clients in the building at any one time. And the visits that I've done around the county buildings up on the hill, up on Table Mountain Boulevard and such, some of those services would be moved down here. And I've never seen, crowds of people or lines of people or anything like that. So that's something that we made sure to address. Here today are Scott Kennelly, Mike Hodson, and Sean Rohrbacher. Sean's not here. Is he on? No. To make a short presentation or answer any questions at the Commission's pleasure. Staff recommends approval.
Is this like the county one that you need a green light, or is it working?
It's
Oh,
working.
okay. I'm looking for the green light. I'm conditioned with the county one. Yeah, good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. Scott Kennelly, Director for Butte County Behavioral Health. The project that we are asking you to approve is a project that the community has asked for, to integrate our services, to make our services more accessible for our population, and to provide more streamlined services. We have done something similar in Chico, where we have a campus where the majority of our programs are all within a walking distance, 1 or 2 blocks. It's been very successful. Our clients primarily use bus or bicycles to get to their appointments, and have found it difficult if they have more than one appointment to traverse across the county to get services. So we are in your community now providing these services in different facilities, and the goal is to have it all on one campus. However, our services are not all on that campus. We do a substantial amount of field-based services. So we go out and see people in the community. We do a lot of telemed services, phone-based services, but we also do in-person services. So that's why, even though we have a large complex with a large number of programs, we won't have a large number of people coming in at any given time. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about what we offer. I know there's a concern about homeless and perhaps attracting individuals who are unsavory. Typically with behavioral health, people go the other direction when they see us. We tend to have the opposite effect, where homeless or people who have untreated addiction issues or mental health issues don't want to talk to us and tend to go the other direction. But we do serve members of our community, mostly individuals with Medi-Cal or low income, and we have not had disruptive events in Oroville that I can recall where we've had to have substantial complaints from neighbors.
And what are the walk-in crisis services?
So that's
Explain
something.
how that works.
Yeah, that's something new that we were asked to add. For the last 23 years that I've been in Butte, and before then, prior directors, our crisis services have been in one location, which is Chico. If someone goes into crisis, they have to drive all the way up to Chico, or law enforcement has to take them up to Chico to be assessed. That's a big hardship for our Oroville population, and the thought was, if we locate a crisis walk-in center in the Oroville Feather River building too, it'd be more convenient for families and kids who need crisis services. It is not an inpatient unit or an involuntary treatment center. It's a place where we do assessments and potentially would initiate a hospitalization or do a safety plan or come up with some other type of referral for services. So it's more to make it more convenient for the population in the south part of the county, because everyone has to go up to Chico right now.
Okay.
And just another piece about crisis. As of January 1st, the state is mandating that all counties go to a mobile crisis model 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And our crisis teams will be dispatching from the Oroville Center and the Chico Center. Right now it's all in Chico, but if this is approved, we'd also be dispatching out of Oroville to go out to Oroville homes or go out to the fields or the community, wherever someone is in crisis, to provide the services.
And then the Live Spot Youth Center, is that like where the gymnasium, isn't there a gymnasium there?
In the Feather River building, there is.
Yeah.
There would be some renovations to the building.
Okay.
But yes, we operate a Live Spot out of Oroville right now, and also one in Gridley that's an after-school program for kids. It's really based on kids building resiliency. They get help with their homework. They learn social skills. It's voluntary, and a lot of our at-risk kids really benefit from that, and those services help prevent those kids going down the path of addiction or perhaps developing severe mental illness. So there's a lot of positive activities that happen there. And we also operate what we call a Strengthening Families program, where we work with parents and kids to try and build conflict resolution skills and make those family dynamics more healthy.
Staff would like to add one item. You'll notice that the list of conditions is very short. That is partly because, or primarily because, it's a county project, and the county typically does its own drawings and drawing approvals and building inspections and such. So the city typically does not do that for its fellow jurisdiction.
How about traffic? Will there be a significant increase in
I'm not sure what the current traffic in the building is. I think it's relatively low. So we were saying we anticipate about 30 people in the building or 30 clients at any given time in the building. We will use it as our base of operations. So we will have staff driving out of the building and doing field-based visits. So you would see more county cars leaving from the parking lot.
any type of security?
We don't anticipate the need for security at this point. We have staff pretty much in every wing of the building, and our experiences using security in Chico, we've used them in the past. They actually tend to escalate situations. So for now, all of our staff are trained in crisis de-escalation skills and do a great job when people do perhaps get agitated and provide the next level of care.
Yeah, the previous use of the site was as a gymnasium and daycare center with a lot of children, and so I would imagine that the traffic at this use is going to be less than the previous use, yeah.
Yeah, there were a lot of after-school gymnastics and recreational activities for kids. There's also a daycare that was operated out of there as well.
Any other questions? No questions, no. All right, close the public hearing. Any questions for staff?
No questions. I just want to say that as my children went to this building for daycare for a long time, and I'm glad to see that it's not that this beautiful building is not going to sit there and not be used. And my day job is working as an analyst with nonprofit organizations doing community needs assessments. And earlier this year we did one for Ampla Health in our communities, and seeing the extreme need for additional behavioral health services that covers all races, all ages, all demographics. I'm very happy to see expansion of services in my community, and I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah, we're looking forward to expanding our services and providing more robust services to the Oroville area.
Okay, get a motion?
I'll move to approve use permit 23-11.
I'll second.
Motion passes with 4 yeses.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. What do we got now? Okay, food trucks. Okay, so item 3. Okay, item 3, food trucks. Okay, Wes?
Yes, this food truck item, mobile vendor village ordinance, it will be presented by Lark McNeil, one of our consultants, and she is on Zoom. So Lark, go ahead and make your presentation, and let's talk about it.
Great. Thank you very much, Wes. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm happy to present to you this evening a proposal. The title is Draft Mobile Food Village Ordinance, but it's really a modification of the city's existing municipal code 17.16.150, which deals with mobile food vendors. What we are recommending this evening is that the Commission conduct a public hearing for the proposed ordinance change, recommend that the City Council adopt a notice of exemption for the proposed ordinance change, and recommend to the City Council that they adopt the proposed changes as modified by the Planning Commission. The city has recently received some inquiries from the public, from private property owners about having multiple food vendors on their property at one time. Staff took a look at its municipal code and determined that there was a shortage or a dearth of regulations for mobile food vendors. Mobile food vendors are commercial use, and having more than one mobile food vendor at a site has become something known as a mobile food village throughout California. They're commercial uses with great growth potential. When a traditional commercial or industrial use develops, they obtain design review approval from the city and pull building permits. Traditional development standards include paved parking, landscaping, walls, or other devices to separate the use from adjacent properties, as well as provide ingress and egress points, driveways, onto the property that meets safety code. It's appropriate to consider basic development standards for multiple mobile food vendors at one location. Additionally, to the standard, staff is recommending a requirement that a minor conditional use permit be required to authorize those uses. The city held a workshop on September 28, 2023, at the Planning Commission to consider the draft ordinance. At that time, we were recommending a totally separate ordinance. It was pointed out by a member of the public that it would be more appropriate to amend the existing ordinance, and staff agreed, and that's where we are tonight. The issues that were raised at the September 28th Planning Commission meeting included that mobile food vendors enjoy an unfair business advantage to the property owners because they don't pay taxes on the restaurant use on the property. Property owners with constructed or stick restaurants must pay property taxes on the property, including the value of those structures, as well as paying water, sewer, and stormwater fees charged by the sewer and water purveyors. This is a fact that cannot be mitigated. The draft ordinance does not permit a mobile food village to be created in the downtown area, which I think is one of the areas of greatest concern. Another issue that was raised was how to control mobile food vendor clients' access to the site. If the mobile food village or two or more mobile food vendors are located within a developed property, there are already existing driveways, parking lots, parking aisles, and landscaping that help direct traffic onto and from the site. However, on vacant properties, you typically do not have, or you may not have, curb gutter sidewalk. And so it's important to designate some type of access point, typically through a driveway, to help indicate to clients, this is where you come in to access your food vendors, unless you want to park on the street and walk to where the vendors are. A driveway or other designated entrance point to the property also alerts pedestrian traffic that this is where vehicular traffic commonly enters and exits the property, and alerting them that they need to be a little more cognizant of what's going on for their own safety. Another issue that was raised was how many mobile food vendors should be allowed at each site. At that time, the commission did not express a great need to limit the number, so the commission may want to consider whether you want to make a recommendation on the number of vending stations or vending vehicles at one site, or if you just want to leave that open. The prior ordinance included operating hours between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. Member of the public recommended changing our starting time to 6 a.m. and the ordinance has been changed accordingly. And the last issue that was raised was the concentration of mobile food vending villages, which would be how close does the commission want to allow these to each other. The commission did not voice any interest in limiting the concentration of mobile food vending villages in the city limits, so staff removed that from the proposed modifications. As will be defined in the current ordinance, a mobile food vendor village is any site or activity where you have more than one mobile food vendor on a private piece of property. Staff recommended that anytime you have two or more, that it requires a conditional use permit. Because you have to make some type of demarcation between when do you need a use permit and when don't you. But additionally, you need to set some type of standard so so the property owners and the public know that if you have this number of vendors there, then you need a use permit, and there should be certain development standards in place. And if you have fewer than that designated number of vendors, then there are no development standards that are required. A member of the public had recommended changing the number of allowed mobile food vendors at one site at one time to 3 or 4, but I will tell you from personal experience, that's going to create a headache for staff. If you have multiple vendors that are possibly coming and going from one location at a time, then it becomes difficult from a code enforcement standpoint. We, in preparing this ordinance, we took a look at who should be ultimately responsible for the condition of the site, particularly for undeveloped sites. The city should control litter, trash, waste collection on the site. I know the county health department, environmental health department has standards for that, but that does not preclude the city from having its own standards to ensure that the site is kept clean and prevents unsightliness. So we're recommending that the property owner be the entity ultimately responsible for maintaining the property. I believe that expecting various food vendors who are coming and going to maintain the site could be problematic from a city code enforcement standpoint. Furthermore, the entity that is finally benefiting from the mobile food vendors is the property owner itself, who will be receiving some type of minor revenue from this use on their property. As we've noted, and you may have noted in other jurisdictions, mobile food vending villages can become quite popular with live music and mobile food vending, maybe having, once a month extravaganza. So we have included standards in here that would allow for music to be played within a 200 square foot area within the mobile food village or on an adjacent property if the property owner agrees, that could be occupied by live or amplified music while more than one mobile food vendor is at the village. We would say that the outdoor music would be permitted consistent with the normally accepted decibels outlined in the noise and safety element of the Oroville General Plan, and as may be permitted as determined by the conditions of approval for the mobile food vendor village minor conditional use permit. The staff packet includes 2 letters we received from Mr. Scott Bullard. The letters are dated October 18th and November 7th. We have reviewed these letters and incorporated changes into the ordinance when the changes were in the best interest of the community. I think one of the first items, if you look at top of page 4, Mr. Bullard is asking that there be a change from the definition of mobile food vending village to allow up to 3 or 4 vendors there before a conditional use permit was required. I do not see a compelling reason to change that definition. The commission can consider what where they want to make the cutoff between requiring a minor use permit. We also felt that parking surfaces for the mobile food vending vehicles themselves should be either pavement, crushed and compacted rock or gravel, or some other type of hard surface. This can be determined in the minor conditional use permit as determined by the zoning ordinance. We didn't believe that any other changes were made because this section allows the zoning administrator to discuss with the applicant what would be an appropriate type of hard surface for the vehicles to be parked on. Mr. Bullard had a comment regarding signage. As you can tell, mobile food vending vehicles do some outrageously wonderful colors and signage on them themselves. We believe that one vendor itself does not need an A-frame sign, but we did revise the draft ordinance to allow 2 A-frame signs as permitted but under the city's existing sign ordinance for a mobile food vending village. There was some question regarding mobile food vehicle overnight storage. We recommend that a requirement that the mobile food vending vehicle be removed from site, or they can be allowed to remain there if the commissary that the vehicle use is on the same site. This would, in case, be a developed site, probably a commercial or industrial property that was appropriately licensed by Butte County Environmental Health Department. Another development standard that staff is proposing at this time is the use of temporary barriers around a mobile food vending village. And the intent of this is to help control traffic onto and off of the site, and to help direct clients to stay on the private property where the mobile food vending village is occurring. Mr. Bullard is arguing that people should have the right to walk where they please without temporary barriers. We're going to leave that to the commission to discuss and make a determination. And we also, finally, we eliminated some requirements that had been in the draft ordinance regarding health and safety issues. The city may impose its own requirements as deemed necessary. Other public agencies have. However, we are going to defer, we're recommending that you defer to the Butte County Environmental Health Department in this instance. There's no anticipated financial impact to this project to the city. Any approved vendor or village will be subject to all customary application fees. This meeting time, date, and project description were published in the Oroville Mercury Register and posted at City Hall. And again, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt Resolution P 2023-21 based on the findings in that resolution and forward their recommendation to the City Council for action. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for our speaker?
Yeah, I mean, she's very thorough.
Actually, let me ask a question. When we talk about the zoning administrator, it's mentioned in the number of documents we look at, and I've always meant to ask, who is the zoning, it is Pat? I thought that might be the case, but I thought I'd ask. And then also, we already get, or the individual mobile food vendors already apply for a city sales tax permit. We collect sales taxes from their taxable sales, is that correct? Already?
You know, I'm not sure about that. We don't have it in the typical standard conditions.
No,
for,
not that that would be addressed here, but it would be,
Well, food
it's
to
something
go,
that,
packaged food to go.
it's something that I would,
exempt.
that is exempt from city sales tax?
Yeah. Well, it's
Including what
exempt
is-
from sales tax, right? When you get your things packaged to go, you don't have to pay it, but when you sit down and you're served.
We will look into that.
Yeah, I don't think that's always
No, I
the
don't think that's
case.
the case.
If it's, if it is a,
You go
per-
to McDonald's,
if
you
it's-
get it to go.
They don't charge you, but if you sit in their restaurant, they do charge you.
That's how it's supposed to be.
I just looked it up. It looks like they are taxed.
yeah, I
I'm
don't
taxed every
think
time
that's.
I go if I take it
No,
or
we,
so-
no, we take it to go, it's taxed.
It's
As
still
long
taxed.
as long as it's a prepared meal, whether you eat it on site or to go, it's,
Yeah.
my understanding is it's subject to sales tax.
Okay, I thought it was if it was served or not.
Because I always
From
have to
the
go in and just go sit
California-
there anyway.
Like if they offered a hamburger, off a shelf and, you take the hamburger, it's not heated or anything, then that could be not taxable. But as long as they've heated it or done something to it, then it's a taxable.
I'm looking at the California website for food vendors tax guide, and it says if you sell hot prepared foods or carbonated beverages such as sodas, you must report tax on those sales. This is from the food vendors Food vendors.
Since one of
Mobile
the
food
questions
vendors.
or concerns is that it's a lower cost operation, they don't pay as much taxes. I just want to make sure that we're at least covered for sales tax for these. And we're going to check if they have to apply for a permit or how that permitting works, or, because I would think that if they're on the city's jurisdiction, then that would be city sales tax, but
We're talking about a business license?
a taxable sales permit?
No, the taxable sales, they do have to have a business license, and they do have to pay sales tax, but they say they pay it quarterly to the California Tax and something board.
I can't think of the name of that.
CDFTA or something like that.
Yeah, it used to be Board of Equalization.
CDTFA is the site
Thank
I'm
you.
on.
I know, I remember
Yeah.
it was 5 letters, there was a C in there
And
somewhere.
then it gets allocated to the appropriate jurisdiction, comes through the county, and the county takes 5 cents, and the city gets 1 cent or something like that, yeah.
And if that was a question, there's the answer. If it's whether or not they get a permit or a license, they do get a license from us per the ordinance, and they also have to have a certificate from the health department.
And if it is a mobile food vendor, whether it is in a village or not, they would still have to get a mobile food vendor permit from the city as well. And Lark, I'm sure that's built into the ordinance like that.
It was existing in the ordinance. Because I remember having a discussion with you about, hold on just a second, let me pull that up.
No, I think I'll just clarify. It sounds like the person who provided comment, who had a problem with the paving and chip sealing provision, I don't think they're in disagreement with what we have done. I just don't think they understood that how we were defining paving, that it's a very loose definition. So I don't think there's really any, I'm not reading that there's an actual conflict there. The only other thing that we might talk about is just the number of vendors that requires a permit. Now, I guess here's a question for staff: is that so these are regulations that we want to apply to any property owner that's going to have at least 2 mobile food vendors on their property, correct? Is it a different question as to how many vendors you'd have on the property before you would start requiring a use permit, or does it have to be the same? Does it have to be that you have to have a use permit with 2 vendors in order to apply regulations for this use at all?
That's what I was wondering.
What are you looking at, or what's your question?
Hubbard is not here.
No,
right, so we
correct.
don't-
We're not able to ask the person at the moment.
I think it's 2 or 20, or, however many. I think doesn't it actually say that in the ordinance too?
Well, it says 2 trucks, so.
Well, the point being is that, yes, we want to be able to apply the regulation if there's 2 or more mobile food vendors on the property. Is it the same question, or is it a different question as to how many mobile food vendors are on a property before we start requiring a use permit? I'm just wondering, because his primary concern seems to be regulatory burden if you have a very small operation, but, we still want to protect the city and our interests and protect public safety, even if there's 2, so. I guess I'm asking, is there any leeway that we can provide that doesn't compromise our ability to regulate or?
If your question is, can we go after those that already have multiple food trucks on a single site once we enact this? No.
No, I
No,
think
that wasn't my question.
you're asking if someone wants to do two, do they have to still do a use permit? Is that your question?
Yes, or would they, or would we be able to keep keep the requirements, the safety requirements that we're putting in our municipal code, without them having to do a use permit if they only had two?
So you're saying, like, is there a measure where it would be a food truck village, but it would be administratively approved rather than a use permit? Not the way that this is written. The way that I read it, it would require a use permit if there's two or more.
Unless we change the number.
I think,
Let's change
I'm
the number.
thinking, because see, I don't want to change the number if we can't, if we have no means to enforce public safety, if there are only two food trucks in the village. And I think I'm hearing the answer is that we would not have the means to do that, and that therefore it's within our interest to keep the use permit at two or higher. Is that staff's?
That's as the ordinance is written, that's the staff recommendation.
But I don't see how that changes the responsibility charging the use permit, because this ordinance would be what they are required to follow.
Right.
Because how much is a use permit? $3,000?
About 4,000 now.
About
Yeah.
4.
Yeah.
So I understood this to be like, one is a definition of what is a food truck village. Is it 4 food trucks? Is it, or is it really 2 or more? And then when do you want to have the use permit? Which kind of doesn't make sense to me, to have a use permit when we have an ordinance that's going into so many details.
The intent of the ordinance would be a mobile food village would be 2 or more mobile food trucks.
Okay,
And
that's the
that's when a
definition.
minor conditional use permit would be required. The conditional use permit runs with the land, so it wouldn't be issued for a particular food truck. Food trucks could change over time. They would, so the property owner would only need to pay that fee once. It wouldn't be an ongoing expense. And I've worked for a couple of small towns, and I cannot stress to you the difficulty of doing code enforcement when there's any ambiguity.
It's not my question.
When you have a small staff, and Oroville, covers a pretty good-sized area. It's pretty stretched. It's stretched far out. And let's face it, sometimes with human nature, if somebody doesn't like a property owner and they know they have a conditional use permit or some kind of regulation on the property, and if they want to give them a hard time, they can call staff and say that this person isn't complying with the conditions. And then staff has to run out and verify, blah, blah, blah. It just makes it much cleaner for the city if it's black or white. It's 1 or it's 2 or more.
So last time this
wasn't my
was,
question.
we discussed this at the planning commission, the other gentleman was here who owned that parcel by Home Depot. So are we abandoning a specific, 1 or 2 specific locations for a food truck village? Because as it stands right now, the only food truck village I see by this definition is the A1 appliance parking lot, because there's usually 3 there all the time, right? You got Boss Burger, I'm sorry, not Boss, you got Righteous Burger, and 2 other trucks or trailers here, right?
Burrito trucks, yeah.
Right, so now, are you gonna make the owner of that center get a use permit because he has 2 or more trucks there? Now, does he always gonna have 2 or more trucks? Can he have up to 5 or 6 trucks? Is there a limit, is there a minimum required, or is there a maximum allowable? I mean, if you go further down the road, you've got this barbecue guy right past the
Big O.
oil changers,
Yeah.
an oil right there. I mean, I do think that it should be, the food truck court needs to be in a paved area where there's a normal flow of ingress and egress, not on a vacant dirt lot, right? That's just coming onto Olive Highway, if you will, right? It should be at least a designated area if we're not gonna have a specific
We
food truck
currently,
village.
we currently have no regulations that either prohibit or allow multiple food trucks on a single location. This would create those rules and regulations. We would then go to the property owners and probably require over time that they submit for use permits for these multiple locations. And I think that's the answer to your question, Carl.
Wes?
Well, I mean, I'm only saying because you have Celestino's in there and you have, right? So, I mean, if there's 3 or 4 food trucks, they're taking up parking spaces, right? Then people say, well, there's too many cars here,
We would review all of those
I
things
mean,
as
A1's
part of the
got,
site plan, yeah.
600 barbecues out in front. I mean, there's just a lot of things that take up space over there, right? So, I mean, I don't know exactly what we're
Excuse
being
me.
asked to do. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, excuse me. If the commissioners would look at the last page for the draft ordinance under paragraph H, it reads approvals. All city-issued mobile food vendor permits issued after the effective date of this ordinance shall be valid for a period of 1 year from the date of approval, from whenever they got their original approval. Any existing city-issued mobile food vendor permits as of the date of the ordinance becomes effective shall expire 180 days after the effective date of this ordinance. All mobile food vendors must apply for a new mobile food vendor permit within 180 days after the effective date of this ordinance and comply with all regulations in this section. So basically, that would allow the city to go to, the A1 appliance parking lot after this ordinance comes into effect and say, you've got 180 days to come in and apply for a minor conditional use permit. So that the intent of this is so that places which might pose a hazard or it's interfering with the parking for certain commercial uses, those are going to sunset out 180 days after this ordinance goes into effect, which is about roughly 6 months. And they would have to come in and get a conditional use permit or a new vending permit, whichever one they held at that time, and obtain a new one. Because we did recognize that there were existing situations throughout the community where there were mobile food vendors, various numbers on developed and undeveloped property, where they could benefit from providing secure ingress or egress from a site, or making sure that there's 2 trash cans available for clients at each vending location.
And that's only if they were to continue to have more than one food vendor. The property owner might say, oh, well, this is just a pain in the keister, so we're only going to let one of you stay now.
Correct.
That's one of the things that they could do.
Yeah, I'm just kind of, we already have a food truck ordinance and they are already regulated, right? We have property owners that are regulated. Their sites are regulated. So now this is kind of a level saying if you're gonna do this on the site, we're adding this other level. And that's kind of the struggle for me, because they already have a license, right? They already are permitted, they have rules to follow. They're going on private property. It just,
I understand. The rules that are in place at this time, though, do not require any designated ingress or egress from a site. And those issues pretty much don't exist for developed sites. They exist mostly on undeveloped sites where there is no curb gutter, driveways, landscape barrier, building, or something that helps control traffic. It alerts pedestrians that you need to take care walking across this property frontage because there may be cars accessing the site without a driveway. I can't, people take cues from different hardscapes. They take cues from different landmarks, whether you're driving a car or you're walking. If I'm walking down the sidewalk and I'm on my cell phone, not really paying attention, but if I see at the corner of my eye, oh, look, there's a driveway apron, that should alert something in my brain to look out for a car.
So essentially then what we're doing is we're turning the A1 parking lot into the village, basically, right?
If they apply.
If they apply for that. So, I mean, if you're talking about putting Connex boxes or containers, then now you're making it a permanent by default or de facto mobile home, mobile food village, right?
Commissioner, I need to apologize during the workshop when I even brought up that issue of the Connex boxes. Those are commonly in place in other communities where you have larger mobile food vendor villages and they're used for storage. That doesn't necessarily mean that we will see them proposed or used in Oroville. And I apologize for muddying that issue. It would be up to the property owner to determine if he wanted one. The city is not designating certain properties in this ordinance as being allowable sites for mobile food villages. What this ordinance is saying is that anyone can apply, if they have industrial or commercially zoned property, you can apply for minor conditional use permit to have X number of mobile food vendors on your property. It does not mean that a Connex box or metal storage container will naturally follow.
But they do have to have a commissary that they go back to.
Right, they do.
the
They're
night.
required by
That's where-
the county, yes.
I mean, I don't think they stay on site.
That's a requirement of the public health department anyway, that they have
Right?
to have a place.
Commissary.
Yeah.
Right, because they,
Which is why we modified the ordinance to address it, because it's already addressed in regulations that they have to follow.
Right.
So, and again, this is a regulation on the property owner that the food trucks would be located on, not a regulation of the food trucks themselves. It's
They're
the
already
requirements of the property owner
That's
that would
correct.
have more than.
Have we gotten any
more
property
than-
owner feedback on this? Or do we need to get any?
The letters from Mr. Hubbard are the ones.
And who is
the
Mr.
feedback
Hubbard?
that would- He's the owner of the Arco Mini Mart at Oro Dam and Feather River.
He's got to come in and talk to us.
He's the owner of the lot at the Home Depot.
Oh, so he did
that
come in
we've
here
been
last
talking
time.
about.
Yeah, he was the fellow
Okay,
who we asked questions of
Right.
here, and we asked him, is there anything? 'Cause I don't know anything about regulating land that a mobile food vendor would be on. We asked him, is there anything in our proposed regulation that they would find burdensome? Provide us with some feedback so that we have some informed action, and they have done that. Lark has made some modifications to the proposed ordinance that take into account a number of things that he has suggested, and then in your agenda, the letter that he had after he reviewed the amendments, which are on pages 48 through 50 of the agenda, list out the items that Mr. Hubbard continued to disagree with. Although I'm going to say, I don't see anything here that, I think that Lark has made a, very reasonable accommodation from what I can tell in the ordinance, and I don't see a reason to, I don't see any other further accommodations that would be, that I would find appropriate myself. I would be willing to recommend the ordinance as Lark has amended it.
There are a couple things I think that should be changed, like the drinking straw. Let's just not regulate that. I mean, whatever we
Well,
have
they-
to do legally, but.
They've already taken that out.
Okay.
That
And
was one of the
then
things that was taken out.
the barrier. It seems like it shouldn't be so, I think that we should allow for traffic to move in this village with the property owner and the people who are there parking their trucks. I would like to see a little more latitude on that than as opposed to just requiring dividing it all up. But I'm also wondering, can we change the number to 3? It just seems like 2 in a parking lot, to me, hardly seems like a village, and it seems like maybe we can make that simpler.
Can I make a point? So when someone is creating a commercial center, there's a determination of how many parking spaces are required based on the uses that will be there. And then as people come and go, and then they leave, and then you look and you see, okay, I want to go in this space, I'm going to do this operation, but that operation per our code requires X number of spaces, and there's only 2 available because they're all used up from the other thing. So having a food truck move into a location without taking a look at the parking spaces that are available there that are required may not be a problem right now at Celestino's, because I always find a parking space when I go there, and I only ever see 2 trucks at Celestino's, but I've heard everyone tell me there's 3, so there must be sometimes. But now it's not a problem, but then it could be a problem later on down the line if people just start allowing trucks to park on their lots without having some sort of review to say whether or not that's going to overpark the place, or is it underpark, right? So I mean, that's just something to consider also.
Yes, but you do have the desire of the food truck owners to create a nice space, and you have the desire, hopefully, of the property owner. So there are some compelling interests there that help to keep the standard what it should be and not make it cluttered. I'm just saying with 2. It just seems a lot of regulation for 2 food trucks to call that a village.
Earlier, Lark had explained why if we make the number 3, it could be a nightmare for the staff. And maybe, Lark, you could repeat on that.
Thank you. From a code enforcement standpoint, if the ordinance read 3 or more constitute a mobile food vendor village, and let's say we had 2 vendors at site A, and one of the vendors was getting ready to leave and another vendor was coming into site A, and so there was temporarily 3 food trucks at the site. And if someone, a passerby, somebody drives past and goes, oh, there's 3 vehicles on site, and they don't have a conditional use permit, and they're supposed to if they have 3, then they call staff and they file a complaint. And staff has to go and investigate it. Now, if staff goes, say we leave the office an hour later, and now there's only 2 because the one in the middle left site A, then it doesn't look like there's a code violation. So basically, I'm trying to be very specific and limit the amount of, Wes, I'm not sure what the word is I'm looking for here, but as specific as we can be and remove any ambiguity, it is going to make it easier for code compliance. And I say that because I did code compliance as a planner for 25 years. And I know how sometimes competing property owners will call you up and say, oh, you've got a problem here. You run out and look and no, there wasn't a problem. So if we can make it as clear as possible, and anything over 1 is a mobile food village, then it just makes it easier. Now, if you want to make determination that a mobile food village is 3 or more, and so that if you have two of them on site, then that is not a mobile food village. Then you could have two on site if you wanted to change that. But again, it's just that ambiguity that I have professionally found challenging to deal with.
Thank you for the input. I still think it's
So
clear.
the issue is code compliance with having two or three?
No, partly. The way that staff or I as staff would interpret various applications, we had a case where a market wanted to put a food truck in their parking lot in a very strategic location. If the food truck had gone into that parking lot, it would have eliminated half the parking that serves that building, and we denied that permit application just because there was not adequate space and there would not be adequate parking, especially if somebody drove up to the food truck, and got out and waited for their food to be prepared and such. So we denied that. In the case of the 2 or possibly 3 trucks up on Olive Highway that you mentioned, the big red barbecue truck and the others, the question of barriers, once they submitted a site plan in order to get the use permit to have those 2 there permanently, they would first of all have 180 days in order to get that use permit. Secondly, we probably wouldn't require barriers because they locate their trucks way off the road, and so there's no issue with children or somebody running onto the street or something like that and causing a safety issue. So we would probably not require barriers. We might require parking striping. We might require paving up there, but the barrier question would go away there. It might surface there at Celestino's, but those trucks have been operating successfully there for a long, long time without any issues. So those are just some of the issues that staff would look at. In this ordinance, we would still regulate every individual food truck. We would issue them a mobile food vendor permit. And for any location that had 2 or more trucks or wanted to have 2 or more trucks, we would require the property owner to provide us a site plan, and we'd evaluate all of these issues. The Hubbards have submitted for 2 food trucks, and they have provided 3 sites that they would locate each food truck at. One of them is the lot up by Home Depot. One of them is the lot that they own that's at the Arco Mini Mart. And we have concluded and have conditioned in that permit that only 1 food truck can go at that Arco station at any one time because of the congestion and the fact that it might interfere. So these are some of the ways in which staff, when we get these applications, interprets these things or would interpret these things. And what Lark has written here seems to me to be something that we can fairly easily use and regulate and key off of.
I would think that having a food truck at the gas station is more of an issue because it's more congested because that's a small site and you've got cars coming in each way, And so if people pull off, not just getting gas, but someone says, okay, I'm gonna go in there and you got 2 cars pulling in, now they're parked all kind of cattywampus on the site and you got cars coming in and out to get gas. I think
Yes.
the site should have a minimum size, right, at least. I don't think it should be allowed just on any site, right?
We would evaluate that size of the parcel. We would evaluate the circulation on the parcel. In this case, it appears that along the bushes on Feather River Boulevard side of that Arco Mini Mart, there is enough space to put a food truck without interfering with congestion. The Greyhound bus that parks and picks up customers parks on the other side, on the Oro Dam side. So it looks like there's not really much conflict there for 1 food truck only.
Yeah. kind of a dumb question. Does the county, what does the county, do they have any regulations for food vendors? Because, I mean, I was actually bought something from a food vendor at Robinson's Market the other day over there on Lower Wyandotte. Right? Does this county have their own,
They regulate the truck.
pardon me?
So they regulate the truck.
So they don't,
Talking about like outside of the city, what does the county do? Or you
yeah, what is the county doing? Because you've got vendors who will park, but they're not within city limits, that might be in the county.
That I don't know.
So, you know what I'm saying? So people might not understand, this is county, this is city, this is, you know? I guess we're looking at this because something has to be done, right? To regulate this?
That, yes, that's the reason we started this, because the food truck village that was originally advertised up by Home Depot showed a site plan with 6 or 7 trucks on it. And there's the opportunity for, rampant appearance of food trucks anywhere and everywhere, and we felt that that needed to be regulated.
So is that idea of a food truck village like that being abandoned now?
No. No, it has not, that we know of. But to address the commissioner's concern, I would like to have you look at item number 18 in the draft ordinance. It looks like it's on page 3. It's down at the bottom of the page. It reads to prevent.
37 of your packet.
Yeah, our page
Oh, I'm
numbers are
sorry.
different than yours, Lark, sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. Item number 18 down at the bottom. To prevent the activities of the mobile food vendor village from intruding into the public street or adjacent property lines, the property line shall be demarcated by a permanent or temporary barrier determined by the city based on the location of the proposed mobile food village. You could interpret that to mean that during the conditional use permit process, the zoning administrator may decide for that particular location that a barrier would not be required. Or you could be more specific and add, let's go to the second sentence at the top of the next page and have it read, this barrier shall be, the necessity for this barrier shall be determined by the zoning administrator and shall be installed and maintained by the property owner.
Mm-hmm.
Would that address your concerns?
That would mine, because I'm thinking when you have a vacant lot, you don't have parking spaces on it.
Right.
So it could just be that a couple trucks could be there and it's very clear and it's all, you pull in and it's simple. So I just wouldn't, I would like it better if some eyes were looking at it to see if it was really necessary to put a barrier up.
We can modify that language at your pleasure.
Because I see what you're saying when you're in a retail mall and there's hardly any parking, you totally need to make sure that you're not messing that up. But a lot of these seem like they're going out also, where they're not in a retail mall.
I mean, to me, that would be the more, I don't know the word, but it's a better spot for, the Home Depot wants a pretty good spot for a food truck village because
It
it
is.
isn't interrupting with anything.
It's great
The
location.
in and out of the street's not so bad. I think when you get into commercial centers,
Yes.
there's other things to look at, safety and overcrowding and that kind of thing.
But they're kind of together in here. It's the same rules.
They are
if you're
together
a-
in here because it was a good time to just take a look at our ordinance in general and then update it all at one time.
So can this be a living, breathing document to where we can always amend it and update it if we want to?
Well, any ordinance is, would you go through the whole process?
Well-
Where, we hang out here for a while and then we go to council and.
So, Mr. Chair, I don't remember if you have opened a public hearing or not on this, but there is a citizen that would like to comment whenever the opportunity arises.
Public hearing open.
Involved in something that maybe I shouldn't have, but I just had a question, mostly just in hearing you guys' conversation, which is actually really enlightening and healthy, so I appreciate you guys having that. Just listening, does the ordinance differentiate between a mobile food village for public use versus private use? I.e., somebody wanting, business owner, property owner wanting to host a
Party.
small private gathering where it's not open to the public with two or more mobile food vendors present. Does that still qualify? Would they need to, sorry, that was it.
That circumstance is regulated using a special event permit, which we have a special event permit process. And that is dealt with as part of that permit.
Yeah, I guess, I've been to a few weddings where they brought in 2 or 3 different food vendors, food trucks, for that one special event. So is that what you're alluding to, something like that?
Like a wedding.
Yeah.
We do it at weddings all the time.
Or-
Even a smaller, I don't, but I guess it's probably covered under other zone code requirements, so.
Yeah, food trucks are very common at farmers markets. The farmers market is issued the permit, and then the farmers market is required to make sure that everyone has their appropriate health permit and such, and that the flow of traffic is useful. If 2 food trucks went onto someone's private property during a wedding and did not use public streets or alleys or anything like that, we would tend not to require a permit for that.
At
For
the
that
farmer's
special event,
market,
temporary use.
at the farmer's market, are they already approved to have multiple food trucks? Is that a whole different situation, so it's not considered a food truck village? Because they do,
They provide us a site plan, and in that site plan, they show where the food trucks would park.
so
and such.
this doesn't change anything for the farmer's market?
No, the mobile food vendors individually are still regulated under
Yes.
this ordinance. Yeah.
Will this stop people from, like, the one parking on that undeveloped site on Olive Highway? Will it prohibit that right now?
One?
They would be given 180 days to apply for a use permit
For that one site?
for that one site, yeah.
But it's not paved or anything. Are we not going to? And what would constitute giving them a permit?
Well, we'd have to look at that. We'd have to get a site plan submitted and the whole bit.
Traffic flow and
Yeah.
ingress, egress and everything?
Yeah.
Is there more than one food truck at that location? Or is it just the one?
No, I've only seen the one.
I've only seen the one, yeah.
yeah, I don't
And
know
if
if
it's
I've ever
just one,
seen-
if it's just one, then it's not gonna
Wouldn't
apply.
change them.
Right, but it still doesn't change the fact that you've got cars coming in and out right there on Olive Highway, which is heavily traveled, that's all I'm saying. That's
It just wouldn't fall under this, under anything that we're regulating here, as long as there's just one.
Right,
That's
but
right, right.
how is that regulated, I guess is my question, how are they regulated?
thing would
If
not-
at all, because it's not,
The site, you're saying the site.
I'm saying the site doesn't,
The
is not
site isn't.
really
We'd only want to know.
No,
the
we're not
designed
business license
for
we could
that.
leave them out of
No,
it.
I don't
That's
think
what
we're
I'm saying.
regulating that site, no.
correct?
Correct.
Yeah,
So it's not regulated for one.
right,
It's just up to the property owner and the food truck driver.
If it was just one, we would make sure that they have a business license, and then
And
that would
that's
be
it.
that.
so then they can go anywhere, then, basically.
With permission of the property owner, and we do require that. So we do require them to tell us in the administrative permit application where they're going to set up.
Okay. Regardless of ingress, egress, anything of that nature. Impeding traffic, that kind of stuff, that doesn't matter.
Well, in the case of the very, very small parking lot, we did deny the administrative permit on that basis, so.
Okay. Okay, any other speakers on this one? No? Close the public hearing. Any other comments for staff?
I have no further questions.
It will just, so the place right now where the liquor store is, where Yo-Yoville, that little area where there's 2 trucks, A1.
Yeah.
This will mean that they probably can't have those 2 trucks there because of the parking spaces that they're currently taking up? Like, are we gonna, will that not be approved in 180 days?
Depends on the count, depends on if it gets congested, depends on if the other business owners object or prefer to have that there. There's a lot of factors that we would weigh.
Have there been complaints about that area before? Are you aware of any?
I haven't heard of any, but that doesn't mean that code enforcement hasn't had any.
Yeah, I'd just rather not mess with that personally. That's why I like up to 3. But that's just my personal thing, just to try to keep it simple.
Okay, so did we make any changes to the draft? Does anybody want to make any changes to the draft ordinance
Looks like
as
there's
it's written?
one change that is proposed here about adding language.
Yes, that the zoning administrator will determine if a barrier it shall be installed on page 38. So we give the flexibility that they don't have to have the barrier depending on the situation.
And then what about the storage container? Are we gonna make that a requirement?
They can have one if they want one, but it's not required.
Not a
If they want
requirement
one, they have to,
Oh.
it's a use permit
Take
to
that
have
out.
one, but they don't
Okay.
have to have one.
So, okay, so this is, okay, optional storage. So this $5,000 deposit is only required if they do a,
I think that's the way they get the storage.
all right, well, do I have a motion? I can't make it.
Yeah. Let's see, what are we called here? Okay, I'll move to adopt the notice of exemption, the findings, and resolution P 2023-21, with the amendment that we clarify that the zoning administrator, if you can help clarify, Natalie, what is it that you?
The barrier shall be or can be installed per the zoning administrator's discretion.
Yeah,
Is that clear enough?
good enough, okay.
That it
thanks.
doesn't have to happen, the barriers. It's if you think that that site needs barriers.
And as
So
a clarification, it sounds like a lot of the things that we've put in here are if staff determines that they're going to be needed at the time that they apply for the use permit.
So if we determine that it would be unsafe to not have a
Yes.
barrier, then we would look at, okay.
Yeah, there's just, that's the thing, we're at all different sites, they're all different.
And I appreciate that staff recognizes that there's going to be some flexibility in from permit to permit, so. Is that good enough? Okay, thank you.
And are we keeping it at 2 trucks makes a village? Or 3 trucks makes a village?
Is there a book to that effect?
It sounds like we have to if we're going to be able to effectively apply any of these rules, even if there's just 2 mobile trucks, that we.
You're rather gonna get 4 on the one site. I don't think you're gonna get that many at one time, unless it really is a designated.
Like
I mean,
a big one, like
we
the Home
might.
Depot.
Thing is,
bigger.
we might. I mean, somebody who's proposing a village might have to have 4 or more trucks in order to
make it work.
pencil.
Exactly.
If we're having the use permit, but we don't want to put ourselves in a pickle by having a situation that we can't enforce reasonable rules just because they only have 2. So.
I don't know, just that one site where it works well with 2, that's what I struggle with. I'd rather just err on the side of making it a little easier.
Does staff feel more confident or comfortable with 2 as opposed to 3?
Yes.
They like 2.
Okay.
Staff is very comfortable with 2.
Staff wants 2.
Where did that come from? Okay. Okay.
I give in.
Do we have a second on this motion?
Oh, and it's Mr. Smith again.
Thank you. Motion passes with 4 yeses.
Okay.
That was tough.
I do appreciate your consideration to not want to
Thank you. It's a tough one. It's easy to do.
So this will likely go to the city council at their second meeting in December. The council has voted not to have a second meeting in November. And December 5th is already pretty booked up. So the second meeting in December or in January. So, and we will also be taking, just for information, the alfresco dining ordinance as well. And also the oak tree ordinance
Hopefully.
if approved.
Okay, so we are headed to what now? The,
Oak tree, aren't we?
Could I request a brief break?
sure. 5-minute, 10-minute break?
Sounds good to me. Thank you.
10 minutes.
Thank you. Lark, thank you very much. Good job.
Yeah, so we're here. And
Thank you, Wes. Will you be in tomorrow?
Yes, in the morning only.
Okay. I'll give you a call in the morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, good. Oh, go ahead. I hope we won't be here too long, but. I think Connor's presentation will answer a lot of questions. Should I do it that way? Yeah. Yeah, side by side with that one. Haven't brought a map, I'm serious.
Oh, of the different areas.
Yeah,
Can
including.
you put that in?
Well, that's, it was just an overlay. This is just from the city's website, GIS. But we'll, well, Connor will explain. We do, that's just that,
There are not many here.
the reason I'm focusing on the foothill overlay is that that's the primary location where you have the foothills, the foothill forest. That's overgrown, and the healthy forest, in order to maintain a healthy forest, we need to reduce
Yep.
fuel and it'll make it more fire safe as well in that area. And I mean, yeah, that boundary could be expanded, but that's a boundary that already exists in our regulations, and it's close enough for what we're wanting to do. Primarily, it's this area here
Yeah, it has
that we
those.
want to make sure. I mean, that doesn't prevent anything from coming in this way, but,
No, and this is Butte County. They- What's their ordinance? Seems like it's similar to ours. I would think it would be.
I don't know.
I don't know who would.
Yeah.
Special meeting?
From last week.
Do we have to do minutes on this? No?
We did that earlier.
Okay. Okay, so this is the zoning, amendment of mini session, okay, so this is the oak tree loss mitigation. Okay, so, okay, Wes?
Yes, Connor Musler, a name known to you, will be presenting this item.
All right.
All right, let's get this meeting over with.
Oh,
Take it away.
look at that. He's got a beard now, full beard now.
The stress that's getting to me. No. This is our oak tree ordinance discussion. So I'll share my screen so you guys can look at the presentation along with me and run through as leisurely or quick as we want. Okay, so oak tree mitigation ordinance. We'll just go over some history, what we're proposing, preservation questions at the end, things like that. So essentially, how we got here is a result of our 2030 general plan that was adopted in 2009. The general plan policies, actions, goals are implemented through primarily the city's municipal code and zoning code. Consistency between our general plan and zoning code are required. But in 2009, our new general plan resulted in quite a few inconsistencies between our zoning code and general plan. So in 2011-12, city applied for Prop 84 funding to make the necessary corrections to our zoning code and the general plan. Through Prop 84, that grant funding was essentially focused on fostering the development of sustainable communities through energy consumption, conserving water, improve air quality, water quality, and creating more sustainable and infill communities. For Oroville, what did that mean? What that grant funded were updates to our design guidelines, created a balanced mode circulation plan, mixed use zoning, created our foothill overlay, SEPTED, climate action plan, and that oak tree loss mitigation ordinance was also created. So this kind of just details in sequence how we got to where we are today. Essentially, the oak tree mitigation ordinance came about as a recommendation through the city's climate action plan. What the climate action plan is, it's how the city is going to mitigate our impacts on changing climate and things like that and lessen that. The general plan implemented or had some actions and policies focusing on oak trees. The climate action plan expanded that and saw the best way to help implement and reduce greenhouse gases and protect natural environments was to focus in on oak trees. So it was adopted, added in section 17.12.065. The intent of the existing ordinance is to outline development standards for when mitigation is required due to the removal of an oak tree and what that mitigation would look like. However, the code section as written contains burdensome regulations, limited exceptions, lacks proper referencing, and honestly, it's never really been implemented and enforced in the way that it works or was intended to work. So native oak tree is located on public or private property, contains a single trunk at 6 inches at DBH, diameter breast height, or multiple trunks at a minimum of 10 inches. And it includes the list of any oak tree native to Butte County. You'll see interior live oak has an asterisk next to it because it's proposed to be affected by this ordinance. So what is changing? Applicability and size criteria are still staying the same for what is considered an oak tree. An exception is being proposed for interior live oaks. That would be limiting and limited to what is a heritage tree. So permits and mitigation would not be required unless that interior live oak meets the definition of a heritage tree. Now, what's a heritage tree? It's a tree with a trunk of 24 inches DBH or greater. So it's an old growth tree, a tree that's been around for quite some time. It can be found in our definition section of our municipal code. The mitigation options are on-site replacement. This is the preferred choice when, preferred choice is to not cut down a tree. But if you have to cut down a tree, it should be replaced on-site. If on-site replacement is not feasible, an in lieu fee is allowed to be paid by code. It's proposed to be modified. And then off-site replacement is when on-site replacement is not feasible, has to be permanently protected under a conservation easement, appropriate for oak tree plantings, and of sufficient size to plant and maintain replacement trees. Changes are not being proposed to the mitigation options. Those 3 options would still remain as those ones. On-site replacement is still the preferred mitigation option. Replacement standards are proposed to change, however, from a 2-to-1 ratio to a 1-to-1 ratio. That will simplify those mitigation requirements. Instead of having to double the amount of oak trees replaced if you were to cut one, it would just be a simple like for like, 1-for-1. The minimum size is increasing to 15 gallons instead of a minimum 1 gallon oak tree. 1 gallon oak tree, I don't know if any of you have seen them. They are very, very tiny and unlikely to survive. And so we kind of be in this constant cycle of replacement. We're proposing an in lieu fee of $220 for each inch of oak tree requiring mitigation. That's broken down to $55 to $60 for a 15-gallon tree. Average 2 crew hours for our streets and trees team, about $75 an hour per crew member, and then $10 for miscellaneous expenses. Currently, the only exception is mitigations not required for trees removed due to poor tree health or if removal furthers urban forestry or land management practices that support the health of native plant communities. What we are now proposing are multiple exceptions to the oak tree mitigation ordinance that are further detailed in the ordinance and provided here, would focus in on fire department personnel, defensible space requirements, routine trimming if a tree is dying, dead, poor health as determined by a certified arborist, or if it's on a developed single-family dwelling unit property. We're proposing to combine tree preservation and tree removal permits under one code section. Tree preservation would no longer exist and become reserved for a future code change or code section. Additional changes are proposed for proper code referencing and proper department director positions. So we ran through it kind of quick. I kind of just want to leave it up to discussion among all of us and see what your guys' thoughts are.
Okay. Any questions for Connor?
So Connor, I have a clarifying question, if it's all right. I know that we had a case on Holly Trail where there were a couple of oak trees outside the setbacks within the building envelope of the parcel. And we, in that case, our arborist allowed those trees to be cut down because they otherwise would have interfered with the creation of this, of an expansion of a structure. So it looks like that's in this ordinance now, that you can cut down oak trees on your lot without replacement. Is that correct?
Correct, yes. And so I kind of want to go through an example in the foothill overlay. Essentially, it's showing, and this would be on any lot, but in a foothill overlay where Holly Trail is, this red area is your typical front setback abutting a street. If it's outside of this area and in this green area where you are allowed to develop your property outside of your setbacks, it could be cut down without the need for mitigation or a tree removal permit because it's in a developable area.
So that's assuming the lot is small. If it's a very big lot and the trees do not interfere with the construction of a structure, can they still be cut down?
Yes, I believe that is the intent of the ordinance. If it's on with the proper zoning and size requirements of the property, it would be able to be cut down without mitigation or permit requirements.
As long as it's not a heritage tree. Right?
Correct. Yeah, for the most part, heritage trees are very much more protected by code, just because they take a long time to get that big, unless there is an exception granted. And I believe it's somewhere in here. I'd have to find it.
So then in the case of the parcel map that we just approved this morning, if someone wanted to cut all the trees down on that top parcel and put a house up there, all the oak trees, there's a lot of oak trees up there, they could do that without having to replace any trees or without having to adjust their site plan in order to maximize the retention of trees and such. So just
If
wanted
that
to...
property was already developed.
See, that property is not developed.
That
currently.
property
Yes,
is not developed.
But it's in the foothill overlay?
No, it is not in the foothill overlay, but that does, yeah, that,
Okay.
yeah.
So Connor, I remember one case we had, you and I, a
Foothill
couple of
overlays
years
across the
ago
street from
where
it,
a family built a garage on their parcel, and we made sure to evaluate the oak trees and such. So I just wanted to clarify that while this would not encourage wanton cutting of oak trees, if you have a very large lot in our woodland area, in our hillside area, it could mean you could cut down some trees indiscriminately, even if you didn't need the space for a structure or something like that. That's what's the way it's written?
Potentially, yes, that could occur. Of course, our development standards are set up for perfect size. Every lot's 20,000 square feet, 10,000 square feet. In the case of the property that you're referencing, it was a very large lot and it would not meet the exception criteria of the 20,000 square feet. And so at that time, if I remember correctly, it was all of the oak trees were below the sizing regulations of our oak tree ordinance, and they were going to avoid any other oak trees that met the criteria.
Okay, and then I guess let me chime in. So full disclosure, Connor and I had a conversation about this ordinance last week, and he was able to answer and address a lot of the concerns that I had at that time. So thank you for the time, Connor. It was really, really helpful. It probably would be helpful to kind of go over what those were and what the response was. Let me start with the question that you just had, Wes, about having a large lot up in the hills, and the term indiscriminately, which is a little bit of a harsh term. The way I understand it is they wouldn't be able to just cut indiscriminately, but under one of the exceptions that, as written, where it has to do with fire safety as determined by the fire department, right? Or fire personnel. There was
Number 4.
Yeah, I have to dig into my piles of paper to find that one. That because as Connor explained to me, that because our fire is now contracted to CAL FIRE, and CAL FIRE itself has some very clear guidelines on forest maintenance for fire safety and forest health, that as long as a landowner would follow those guidelines and go no further, that the cutting of the trees would be acceptable. Is that an appropriate summary of what we talked about, Connor?
I would say so. I don't think you're lying. So, in that part of it, it's CAL FIRE does have pretty clear regulations for defensible space, with the minimum 6 foot high, limbs cut up, no closer than 10 feet, whatever it may be, to the structure. As staff, I would hope that would feel comfortable to take as a defensible space requirement by CAL FIRE. I know they do come out to certain properties within the unincorporated area of Butte County and do conduct inspections during high fire, prior to the high fire season, and they do let owners know, hey, move your wood away from the house, or you need to cut your weeds down a little bit. We'll come back out in a couple weeks to inspect to confirm. So that's trying to cover all bases in terms of that fire department personnel. You can utilize their created defensible space requirements, or they may also come out to your property to conduct an inspection during the high fire season. In addition, I know it's a state of California requirement for those in a high fire threat district to receive a fire inspection prior to sale of the home. And that's something new that's come around. So that would also be detailed in that inspection, what needs to be done, if anything.
And then beyond defensible space, they also have guidelines on healthy forest outside of the defensible space, about a recommended tree canopy of 40%, or not more than 40%, in order to keep the forest as healthy and as fire. It's the best balance between forest health and fire safety. I'd have to go to reference the document for anything more specific than that, but I guess just to add that as a clarification. And that really kind of helps with a lot of some of the work that I know still needs to be done, particularly in our foothill areas where the forest, a lot of the forest in that part of the city is overgrown, and it would be nice if we could encourage our landowners to treat it a little bit better, to create a more healthy, more native forest. The native forest is not as dense as the forest that we have in there now, and help protect the city in case fire were to come through. One of my comments in here was going to be that it's I don't want to impede progress in search of perfection. The amendments that Connor has proposed to our various tree ordinances here are an improvement, a significant improvement over what we had in the past, and I would be willing to pass these to the council as is, but I also want to keep talking about tree maintenance and regulation. Because I think there are some things that we might be able to do more in the future. I'm wondering if, the treatment of the hillside forest, the hill section of our city's forest, might be better addressed perhaps even in another ordinance that encourages fire-safe landscapes. I don't know. I don't have the solution to that. That kind of discussion would prolong this, this amendment farther into the future that I don't want to do. So I am interested in getting something recommended to the council, but I don't want to let this go from our conversation quite yet. Let's see. Is there anything else in here? And if anybody else has any other comments or
So, yeah,
questions.
Connor,
fine.
under replacement standards, number 4 for monitoring. Say a developer comes in and is gonna remove trees, right? And some trees, and they plant new trees and new yards of new homes. Is this making the developer applicant still monitor these trees when they're no longer, when they are now in someone else's front yard and the developer's gone? Who's responsible for monitoring the tree for the 5 years? The new homeowner? And is the builder somehow still responsible for this replacement tree? You understand my question?
Yes, and that is a good question of where and when that responsibility of monitoring that comes into play. So I know we did analyze something similar to like that with the Ruddy Creek subdivision and the how we can maximize the oak tree mitigation and replacement on site. And I believe part of that discussions included planting them along the back, fronting 18th and Feather Avenue, and then potentially on the front yards of those single family homes right there. I don't believe any further discussions were had in terms of monitoring those. It's in that odd gray area of it is a replacement tree, but as soon as it's turned over to that property owner, they have the free will to kind of do what they want in their front yard and re-landscape it how they want. So that is an interesting conversation that would come up. And I think that would be analyzed and determined in that specific mitigation agreement with that developer.
Okay, because, that is a very, I can see that situation coming up in the future, where who's gonna, and then also, if someone does want to do an addition on their existing single-family residence, and they have to remove a few oak trees, are they gonna be required to have the large expense of hiring an arborist?
Like they're exempt.
They're exempt from hiring an arborist?
Well, I don't know. That's what I was trying to understand. Is this exception if you're on like a half-acre lot in an R1 zone? Am I reading that right? That you basically are exempt?
Exemption number 8.
Yes.
Correct. Yes. So if you're on a developed single family with a lot developed with a single family home, and you meet those size criteria, you're exempt. You don't have to comply with the permits. You don't have to get a mitigation requirement for those ones. You are able to go ahead and cut that down as you see fit. That is a pretty standard and in line with some other jurisdictions that we looked at. The scope of how they do it varies. It determines on they could do size. Sometimes they say on any lot you can cut it down, on any single family lot. But you would not have to get a permit or an arborist report or anything like that.
Replace it? Yes?
No, you're exempt
Do
from
you have to
mitigation.
replace it? Like, completely exempt? Okay.
Yeah, it's almost that there's really kind of two parts to this, although it's not separated that way, that there's a part that has to do with a property that's going to be developed, where a developer comes in, has to do grading, has to install utilities, has to do all kinds of things, build buildings. Those are the situations where the mitigation comes in, the mitigation rules come in. And then there's a second side where you have a single-family home on a single parcel. And as long as as long as you meet one of the long list of exemptions here, that it's, that it's small enough, that you're doing cutting that has to do with fire safety, or you're removing a dead tree, or there are all of these things that I think are reasonable exceptions that, you don't have to get a permit in order to cut down
If you
a
have
tree.
a larger lot. Because if your lot's small,
If you have a
you're-
larger lot, then you have to have one of the exemptions, like the
Right.
fire safety one, or,
Yeah.
like I have an acre and a half property.
Right.
I can't just go through and cut down every tree on my property. That would be a no-no.
No, no, I'm just saying,
But-
you don't want to make the lot, not buildable because there's a tree right in the middle of the building envelope. Right. So,
And I had another question. When you get a 15-gallon tree, how many inches is that trunk? Is it 6 inches? Is it less? It's way less than that, right?
It varies. Typically, they're
1
not going to
inch,
be
2
that
inch,
big. I mean, someone could put a 1-inch oak tree in a 15-gallon, pot if they wanted to. But generally, they're not going to meet the 6-inch
no.
size that would really classify them.
Okay. So it's just a 1-to-1 ratio using the minimum size of the 15-gallon trees.
And the 15-gallon really has to do with making sure you capture enough of the root stock of the tree so that that it's not going to, it's less likely to die on you when you disturb it by replanting it. Correct?
Correct. Yeah. So the larger the pot is, it's easier. The chances your tree is going to live longer. The current ordinance allowed individuals to replace, if they cut down a tree, with 100 1-inch in 1 gallon, oak trees, and that survivability probability is going to be pretty low. And we'd be looking at a constant cycle of having to go back and replant those trees and remitigate those, and it just wasn't going to be feasible.
So Connor, in my recollection, I think we had a discussion with Wade at one point in time that a 15-gallon tree was equivalent to about an inch. Is that
Really?
is that
About an inch around.
yeah?
That seems
pretty small.
familiar.
Small,
I just
yeah.
know it didn't exceed 6 because 6 was a little too big.
I pulled up something that says it's probably about 6 to 8 feet tall, but I don't see, it says 1 inch to 1.25.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so
California.
Terry said-
And we're talking about diameter at breast height too, so not at the base,
4
but
feet.
Right.
Right.
yeah.
What is the in lieu fee used for?
Cover.
So the in lieu fee would be utilized for staff to plant oak trees to help mitigate those ones that the individual developer, property owner could not mitigate on their site. So currently the city does plant oak trees within our parks, or you'll see them along Arlen Ryan Memorial Drive up there by Centennial Plaza. On our vacant lots, we've planted oak trees. That essentially would be the city drawing from the oak tree maintenance fund to help maintain oak trees within the city, plant new oak trees, and continue to grow up our native oak stock.
Okay, good. Any other questions for Connor?
No, that
No.
went through my concerns, and many of them ended up getting bottled up into single answers, so it's
It would be
very good.
easier for homeowners if it was divided out. So you could look at the code and go, I'm not a developer, I just want to know, what do I do with my oak tree? It would make it clear for people who aren't
And I-
professional at reading
And
this.
I would agree with that, and I think we can probably address that in a subsequent modification if we're gonna continue to look at this, which I would like to do.
And in my conversations with Commissioner Jensen, we did talk about how currently there isn't even a tree removal permit application with the city. We don't have, a fee adopted for a tree removal permit. So the ordinance was initially adopted, but never completed. And so what we would really be looking at is we would have an application that would hopefully be a little clear on what the applicability is for an individual property owner. And other jurisdictions, you look at City of Rockland, I want to say Folsom, they've provided pretty detailed guides and applicants information that makes it clear of, pretty pictures and what it looks like.
Okay, and if we can get it to work that way, then without having to redo the ordinance, that actually sounds preferable, yeah.
But people go online to figure it out, though.
If I recall, Connor created a draft oak tree removal permit application, which has not been used or implemented, and I still have that, so we can start using that when this ordinance passes.
Okay, do we have any speakers for this?
We do not.
Okay. I will close the public hearing. So, anybody want to make a stab at a motion?
Now, we have not
Change
made any changes to the current, correct?
I don't
Doesn't look
believe,
like
I
it.
mean,
Yeah,
only,
that's
to
which-
Connors.
well, there's
Okay.
clarification on the question that I brought up about the monitoring. But I don't know if that, but you said that's going to be, that'll be addressed with any future developers at that point, correct? For the,
Correct, yes. So with the mitigation monitoring, that would be included as part of any conditions of approval and environmental document for a subdivision. And that would have to be worked out with that developer or owner at that time.
does it have to be somehow referenced in here, or is that sort of a, kind of a given?
It's kind of just a given. It would go through the standard CEQA process, and we would utilize these regulations as our benchmarks, thresholds to follow in determining what mitigation would look like, and sit down with that developer and determine what mitigation are you proposing. Are you just going to pay the in lieu fee, replace on-site, replace off-site? If you're replacing on-site, where's it going to go, and what's that going to look like?
Okay, all right.
But if you have an 1.5 acre parcel and you take down an oak tree to develop, and then you have to plant another one, you have to monitor it for 5 years. But then if you sell, that's what I'm thinking, can we just put in, so how does that work? The new owner monitors?
The new owner would likely have to monitor it, and it could get deeper into the weeds of this if it really wanted to go extreme and record a deed against the property of maintaining an oak tree.
Even, do most places, I guess I'm wondering the point of that.
Party or something, you know.
Yeah, it's very.
So the applicant really doesn't have
ambiguous,
to
and
monitor.
I guess if you live there, you have to, but.
That's what I'm saying, it
I mean,
just
and
seems
also,
silly, that
and
line to
also,
me.
well, and realistically, we need to think about what city staff would be able to enforce in the monitoring. I mean, I don't think anybody on staff is going to be doing surveys at every property every
I
year.
don't
I know,
think
so
they have the
should we
time.
just take
Right.
it out?
Right.
I'd rather just leave it.
No, I think you leave it as
Leave it,
Connor suggested.
You know,
It'll be,
as much as the property owner is going to follow through and monitor, that's great, but we just don't want to make it so complicated with things like transfer of ownership or whatnot that it's going to make it more difficult.
No, I know, that's why I almost think we just don't need it. But,
So part of the monitoring, I guess, if we want to look at a workaround, is they report on the status to the Community Development Department annually or upon request for 5 years. We can say
Yeah.
we'll never request that and we'll never know.
yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Or upon request.
Underline the upon.
well, yeah, that's the part I'd read.
Okay. Okay, so,
All right, so I'll move to adopt Resolution 2023-20 that recommends that the city council adopt the ordinance, or adopt the 3 ordinances that we are amending, well, 1 that we're getting rid of, 2 that we're amending.
I second.
Motion passes with 4 yeses.
It's awesome. We need like Connor's display that he did online for people. That was much clearer.
Is it appropriate? Is it appropriate to add the proviso to the city council that Planning Commission would like to continue working on tree regulation?
Perfecting it.
Or is that just something we would do?
That's just something that you can do at your discretion.
Okay.
I would like to note that this is already pre-scheduled to go in front of the city council at its second meeting in December, which I believe is the 17th. No, December 19th.
Okay. Pass it on to them now. So was that what do we have?
One last.
Oh, Historical Advisory Commission?
Yeah, this will be
Is there
quick.
reports?
Yep, this is
Okay.
quick though. And I think you have that here.
Where's
Yes,
that? Oh, there it is.
at the, I don't know, a city council meeting maybe 2 weeks ago. I was able to present this to the city council and it passed, and it was great because there were tons of people at the meeting because they were all there for the YMCA, but, because that normally doesn't happen. So basically, we have permission to recognize historic preservation in Oroville, and it's our responsibility, and I know there is gonna be, so who on staff is, because it used to be Daniel, that we kind of.
That will be Noel and I.
Thanks, Connor.
Okay. Because we are going to want to get the information out to people. On Facebook, we were maybe going to do an article in the newspaper, just letting people know we have these brochures so that people could nominate if they wanted to, and then we will have to decide and pick one, or we could pick more. And we announce it at the state of the city. And then we have a timeline in here to keep us on track. So then Noel is gonna be getting the sponsors to help pay for it?
Oh, no, I think the Planning Commission and the Historical Advisory Commission are going to be
I'm
getting
going
the
to Home
sponsors.
Depot tomorrow and I'm going with, what letter do I take?
So there is in here a letter to potential sponsors. And would like to make a note of two occurrences that happened at the meeting. One is there was some lack of knowledge about the fact that the Planning Commission and the Historical Advisory Commission are the same body. So the council asked for more clear links between the Planning Commission and the Historical Advisory Committee in various, publications and notices and that sort of thing. So we'll ramp that up. And then the second was, you can see on the page 128 in this copy that Commissioner Weber objected vehemently to the wording that's the duties of the commission, existing duties of the commission. And so we struck that from the approved information. It is information, it is not part of the, the actual award, but Commissioner Weber's problem with this, even though it is in code, was a First Amendment question, a First Amendment concern that there is a historical advisory commission that does regulate landmarks and tells people what they can do with their own properties. So that was the gist of his concern. It didn't go very far. The rest of the council didn't pick it up, but that's just a heads up as to why that's crossed off.
But it is interesting because we don't have any of that authority. None of this here gives us any authority to regulate or control. I mean, all of this is educational and advising. There's really nothing in here that says that we sit here and tell you what paint color.
No,
what
I
molding.
mean, if it's a historical building, there's things you can and cannot do if it's a registered historical building, right?
Yes.
That doesn't say it
But
here.
this is just an award recognizing that you have such a building.
Yes, this is
correct?
just our, oh yes. This is
Yeah,
just
that's all
an
it
award.
is.
But these are our duties listed in
This
the
is just
city
the
code, that's it.
background of
It's just the background.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's nothing that I see here, unless I'm missing it, nothing in our code that says that we have the power to go around and tell people what paint color.
No.
So I think that's a misunderstanding, that having a historic advisory commission means that you're automatically onerous on property owners. This is not that at all, and this is all that we have.
Yeah.
So that's why I just want to do this educational, promotional component. But yes, it's not part of the award program at all.
No, so it's,
The state does enough of that.
Right.
There is no more fee simple, really. Okay, anything else?
staff reports
Staff reports?
and commissioner reports, if any.
Do you have any?
I have staff report, yeah.
Okay.
I'll be brief. I would like to ask this planning commission to move its fourth Thursday planning commission meeting
For
from
December?
the 28th, which
Yes.
is after Christmas and between Christmas and New Year's, to the 21st. Move it up a week like we did the one in November.
So move the 12/28 meeting to 12/21?
Yes,
Okay.
it's still approaching Christmas, but it's,
Still at 6 PM?
yes.
Okay. Any objections?
Nope.
Nope. Okay.
Okay, and then in that case, we would like to move the Development Review Committee meeting up a week to December 7th, which gives us 2 weeks between the DRC and the Planning Commission.
DRC on, to be 12/7?
Yes.
We'll be in this U2. Any objections?
Well, yeah, and I'm not in the DRC.
Oh, you're not?
No.
Warren
who's in
and,
it?
Oh, you're
Warren
in
and
it.
Terry.
Those two. Yeah, no, we're
Yeah,
off.
go ahead and do it, no problem.
Yeah, I have no objection.
Okay, and then the agenda for December 7th is shaping up rather nicely. The agenda will be a preview of the gateway, some initial design ideas and thematic ideas and such, and
From who?
from the architect.
From the Gateway Project?
Mark
Yes, for the
Mendez's
gateway
architect?
project. Yes, Mark
Okay.
Mendez is architect. This is just a preliminary, they'll see several options. He's just wanting to get input, no decisions or anything like that. It's a very preliminary meeting, just a preview.
That'll be fun.
We'll also be inviting a couple of city council members so that we can get some buy-in and weigh in on direct feedback on, themes and site planning and that sort of thing. So that'll be an interesting meeting. Also, a deferred development agreement for 2665 B Street, which is a very small parcel. It's an 1,800 square foot parcel down in South Oroville, where there are no streets and sidewalks. Our code requires the developer to put streets and sidewalks in, but it's really not appropriate to do at this time. So that would be what that would be for. Council meeting on December 19th, the oak tree mitigation ordinance. I'll see if we can get the food truck village ordinance in there. And we still have pending the alfresco dining ordinance, which we have to schedule. So those would be three things going before the city council as soon as we can. Planning Commission on December 21st might be a Starbucks use permit at 2040 3rd Street. The Lally Commercial Center up there in the same lot as the Chevron at 3rd and Grand.
Third and Grand?
The Grand Avenue.
Next to the,
Next to the Chevrons.
next to the Chevron station?
Yeah, there's a small building behind
Oh,
it.
that building.
Oh, that little
that's
commercial
sitting
building
there.
that's been being built for 7 years?
Yes.
They're
Or
gonna put a
longer.
Starbucks in there?
That's the intent. We're expecting an application soon for that.
Wow, a third Starbucks.
I
We
know,
have
that's a lot
really-
of Starbucks.
We have really come a long way.
Hey,
It's a lot of Starbucks.
Wow.
remember when we had none?
Wow.
So on other news, the RV park at Nelson and 70, which we've all heard about, they're starting an environmental document. They're going to need to do a negative declaration. It could not avoid CEQA. So that will come to the Planning Commission in February or March. That's a 115 space luxury RV resort.
Kind of an oxymoron. Okay.
It'll be it's our only it'll be our only camping area, right?
You mean you haven't spent $1 million on an RV?
Yeah.
I
they're-
have
They
not.
have
they're a
those.
fortune.
And
Camping on Astro.
probably won't.
That was a
Was it?
pretty significant.
Is it nice?
Proposal, yeah.
Well, I mean, I hear the ones at Gold Country and Feather Falls are always full.
Yeah.
They're always full.
KOA.
Yeah.
On November 29th, which is Wednesday, after Thanksgiving, in the evening, staff will be conducting a public design meeting for our Oroville logo, branding logo. As you know, this became quite a point of contention at City Council, and this is, we're going out for a community design of this logo. Yes.
What is wrong with the one that we have right there?
That's the seal.
Oh, that's a seal.
not a logo.
Oh, okay. My bad.
Get your logo and your seal.
I guess.
It's not fractal.
You know, like Starbucks has a logo.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can picture their logo.
Okay.
That's a logo. That's a good logo.
So we will also shift into marketing and putting out an RFP for marketing firms to help us promote the city.
What time on Wednesday?
I think it's 5 o'clock,
5 p.m.
5 p.m.
Okay.
here in this room.
You know, instead of spending $100,000 on a marketing, why don't we put it out to the public?
I think that's what this is.
As a contest.
That's what this is. Yeah, that's what the
Oh.
29th is.
Are you-
That's
so-
a lot of what the city has done.
Well, I mean, I mean, when I saw this last one where they had the O whatever, I mean, you had a lot of people
An option they had.
putting on their logo and said, I just,
The
you
Oroville,
know, pay me
California.
$5.
So that's
You know, and they had-
collapsing the marketing program with the logo. So the logo, what happened before was a whole
6 o'clock.
a data collection activity, and then with with a marketing program that came up after it. And the logo was just something that we would use to as an identifier, but it was not what the project was before. So what this is now is just a logo so that we, again, have an identifier like Starbucks or McDonald's or something like
Okay.
that. And then the rest of it, so the marketing thing is how do we attract people to come here for businesses, for development, for tourism, for all that. So, and we are creating it so that someone could bid all or part. So they could bid on just the local stuff or just the tourism or the entire thing. And that way it does open it up for a local person, a smaller local firm to be able to have an opportunity to bid on it as well.
Yeah.
And then lastly,
6 o'clock, right? On the 29th. Did I get that right?
5 o'clock.
Oh,
5
okay.
o'clock.
Sorry. I knew
6
it.
o'clock for DK.
And then lastly, on November 8th, last Wednesday, we had a successful community meeting to get input on South Oroville revitalization. 4 expert planners from the American Planning Association came and essentially conducted a charrette and some tabletop mapping exercises and some dot voting on priorities and such. And they will make recommendations on action items, implementation for us to improve down South Oroville. And some of the ideas that came out were rezoning Meyer Street to make it more neighborhood commercial friendly as opposed to heavy commercial. Looking at gateway opportunities, perhaps bike paths on Myers and on Wyandotte. there were a couple of other suggestions that came out. We'll bring it to the planning commission, yeah. We'll get recommendations and an outline and such over the next couple of months. And it also our actions are likely to include a ramping up of the residential facade and renovation. Help me out with the language.
We have another funding. I spent funds, housing money for 20 years.
Is that like a replacement of RDA money? Okay.
So it allows us the flexibility without having to make the.
We've already done a blight analysis, and so we've identified 30% of all the structures in that section of town that need some sort of renovation: roofs, windows, walls, et cetera, foundation treatments, electrical, that sort of thing. So we have a list already of the properties that could use that. So our outreach will be highly focused.
What about some of these vacant properties that have been either vandalized or vacant, vandalized, damaged by fire or whatever? There's still a number of properties out there that they're just dilapidated. I mean, I've seen one that's been boarded up for 5 years. I mean, so is there something in our ordinance that we can, as a minimum property standard?
We have it.
Well, again, there's a house up on Canyon Highlands that caught fire probably 4 or 5 years ago. And it was, now it was painted purple. Now I don't know what color it is, but it's been boarded up and there's nothing been done to it. So it becomes a neighborhood eyesore.
So code enforcement does have a whole program that they're working on with this. I talked to Ron Belzer about this just yesterday, actually, and there's a whole process. They can't just go in and take it, but they are already working down the path with several homes that are vacant, blighted, that are hazardous. And so there's a time period they have to go through, and then once they go through that, then something else can happen.
Yeah, then they have to be torn down.
Yeah,
I think.
they do. There's 2 near me, and they're very dangerous.
Well, there's one
People
on
go in
downtown.
them-
It used to be an old, I don't know if it was a triplex or fourplex, eightplex,
Yeah,
whatever.
across from the orange tree.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
I know.
there's
people,
these
I'm kicking
properties.
people out of there all the time.
They have to.
Yeah.
They just can't stay half built. They need to be either. Sometimes you tear them down, and then there's a deed restriction, or there's a. This reference on the title report that there's this substandard housing, and it needs to be an assessment or something.
So I don't know what houses he has on his list, but he has a pretty robust program going after those homes, and he's been working with the city attorney for that. So you can't just go in and knock someone's house down, even if it is burnt. You have to go through a whole thing. So, but
It
that's
seems like
in
it
process.
takes 5 years.
Well, there are two.
I think that actually might be.
I mean, it feels like
I
it
think
takes
that
I
might
mean,
be the sweet.
If it's
the
not, if it's,
timeframe.
I mean, I know of one specifically because I bought the lot. It was a home that had burnt down, and a couple of years later, the city of Dublin said it's unsafe housing. Either you tear it down, or we're going to tear it down, and we're going to charge you
In
for
the
it.
property, right.
Yeah.
And so
So you have to
they tore that structure down. So I know it can't take. I mean, the city's police powers is endless to a certain extent. They should be able, but these properties that are like that, they just, we'll never be able to fix up the area if you don't get rid of these blighted properties, because it's just.
It was one of the things that they identified in in the surveys for the people in that area also, is that they would like to have some of those blighted properties that be removed, just taken out of the inventory entirely.
Yep.
And Ron is hot on the trail. Ron got high praises. Actually, the code enforcement department got high praises from this group that we met with last week. And the planners did interviews with council, and then people from the town, people from that area, and across the board, code enforcement was getting really high marks. And that is, I don't know if you know how rare that is for a code enforcement department to get. I used to do code enforcement. It's a thankless job in most cities because the city doesn't really understand what you're doing necessarily, and you're a pain. And then the people to the public, you're a pain. But in this city, they're respected and rewarded, and it's pretty nice for them.
Well, I mean, I think you get a lot of regentrification in those areas, because on a lot of those lots that were built, I mean, you already have the sewer and water, you have your fees paid, right? You have, you already have PG&E and gas. So, I mean, there's, for a small builder or a local contractor, someone to come in there, the lot already has its fees paid, right?
Yeah.
So those would be very developable sites without having to pay those fees. And you could then, with the savings, I mean, they could be for first-time home buyer programs. It's what we need, right? Because there's no first-time home buyer program homes, right?
Oh, we have one.
One.
I mean, we have a first-time home buyer program, and
No, but I mean, there's no inventory.
No, we don't. Yeah, we don't maintain an inventory for
Right.
that. No.
But if it was feasible, we could do it. That's what I'm saying, is there could be more inventory, more people would offer their homes to a first-time home buyer.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, so.
Part of the issue there is the use of public funds is very limited. The availability of
They make
public
it
funds. This grant that we have will give us $800,000 that we can use for roof repairs and windows and such. Ron has two tools that he uses pretty effectively. One is this this vacant property monitoring. They contact the owner, and then they work with the owner on a voluntary basis, who pays a stipend to the city, and they make sure that the property is well boarded up, not accessible to squatters, et cetera, and cleaned up and such, and monitored, so that that situation is maintained until such time as the owner can then reconstruct or renovate or tear down and rebuild. The other is receivership, which I'm sure you're familiar with, but that's the one that Pat said takes years sometimes. But there are active receivership cases going right now with code enforcement.
It's a start. One last thing, I know Warren and I don't know where we are with that, wanted to meet and think about slowing traffic on Montgomery. I want to learn more about that.
We have sent an evite for that meeting on I think it's the 29th.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so this shows how I didn't check my email. Oh, okay.
That they're gonna have.
Okay, thank you.
Fred Mayo started looking at that the very next day.
I think we can do better than speed bumps. I don't know. For bikers, I
Anything
think
else?
it's hard.